Welcome to the January 19th meeting of the Ann Arbor Renters Commission. The purpose of the Renters Commission is to advise the City Council and the City Administrator in matters affecting renters in the city. The commission is made up of voting members who are appointed by the mayor and approved by City Council, of City Council members appointed by City Council, of non-voting liaisons to the House and Human Services Advisory Board, of non-voting members representing different landlord perspectives, and of a non-voting representative to University of Michigan Student Services. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, you'll be able to speak through the webinar link or by phone, depending on your method of access to this meeting. And I don't know if there's anybody here right now. Oh yeah, there's two. For phone access, you have to call 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 and enter the meeting ID 935-8080-1941. And then you press *9 or use the raise hand feature. But I guess when we get to the public comment part, Kristen will walk you through all of that. So I'm going to skip ahead. So let's do a roll call. I know we have some new people here, and just say that you're here and then where you're calling from because we're remote. So Commissioner Chen, are you here today?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Are you calling from Ann Arbor?
Oh, yeah. I'm from Ann Arbor.
Great. Commissioner Kelly?
Hi, I'm here and also calling from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Mukherjee isn't here tonight. Commissioner Cohen-Smith?
Here and calling from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Cato? Commissioner Rumel? Commissioner Droppelman?
I'm here and I'm calling from Ann Arbor.
Great. Welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
Commissioner Else?
Here and from Ann Arbor as well.
Welcome to the commission. Commissioner Lowe's? Commissioner Tibbetts?
Here and calling from Ann Arbor.
Great. Welcome. Commissioner Rosen?
Hi, I'm here and I'm calling from Ann Arbor as well.
Hi. Commissioner Wansa? Councilmember Radina?
Here in Ann Arbor, and I will apologize in advance for my glitchy camera tonight. You might notice me going a little crazy.
No worries. Councilmember Harrison?
I'm here and from Ann Arbor.
Great. And Kristen is here, and is the city attorney John Reiser here tonight?
He will be joining a little bit later. He's attending an event that should be wrapping up shortly.
Great. So to get started, we have a couple new members, as I'm sure people noticed. So it would be great if everybody who's new could introduce themselves, and I'll just call on you so that you're not awkwardly calling on other people. And, just say who you are, what brought you to the commission, and anything else that you want to share. And we could start with Jamie, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Jamie. I'm a current Master of Social Work student, and I've worked in the field of social work for a few years now. Most recently, I was working for an organization that supports families experiencing homelessness. So doing that work, I got a interesting perspective of the challenges that people with low income and particularly people who have rental subsidy vouchers, part of that program, the challenges that they face when they do find a rental property, and just noticing that they seem to be especially vulnerable to sometimes predatory practices on behalf of landlords. And that really just piqued my interest in tenants' rights. And this was one of the first things I learned about when I moved to Ann Arbor, and I'm really excited to be here and meet everybody.
Great to have you on the commission. Welcome. Bob, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Bob Droppelman. I am one of the non-voting individuals providing landlord's perspective. We own one house that we rent. And so we would represent the small landlord perspective. That's been kind of, I guess you could call it a side hustle. I work for Michigan Medicine in information assurance as well.
Great to have you here. And Jordan, it'd be great to. Yep.
Oh, you ready for me? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
I'm Jordan. I know a lot of you already know me because I've been kind of attending as a watcher for a while. Little bit about us. My husband and I own rental property in town. We own and manage everything that we manage on our own with a couple of employees. I am a nurse practitioner by degree, but once I had kids, that was not a workplace that could sustain my life with two small kids. So I've been home with my husband since then. I rented in Ann Arbor as a student as recently as 2014. So I do have a little bit of experience with that. But other than that, I've been very active in parent spaces and kind of connecting and trying to figure out what students do need and want and advocating for that, even if it means that I am blacklisted by landlord organizations. So something that's really important to us is to make sure that we are always listening and fighting for those perspectives. And I think we have a good number of tenants that we are able to connect with, varying from working professionals in the city to undergrads, though we do end up being mostly student housing. And so that's kind of our love. I do a lot of activism work in the community outside of this, and that's kind of our role in the city and something that we hope to uphold. So I'm really glad to be here and listen and learn. And thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Good to have so many new people. And I know that there's at least one other commissioner who couldn't be here tonight. So commission is filling out, which is great. Did everybody get the agenda? Because the next thing is to approve that. So if somebody could make a motion to approve the agenda.
I can motion to approve the agenda.
Great. Motion by Patrick, and a second.
Second.
Great. All in favor? And for people who are new, we just vote by voice. You can just say yay if you vote yes.
Yay.
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 Oh, wait, we can't vote. How does it work for Robert and I? Can we like motion for something, or can we not? Or I guess I don't know the logistics of that.
Good question. Kristen, could you answer that for us?
Sure. Since you both are non-voting members, you can't motion or second, can't move or second something or vote, but your input is definitely welcome in discussion of those items.
I think everybody said yay, but if anybody wants to vote nay, this is your chance. Those opposed, say nay. Okay, so the agenda is approved, and then we also have to approve the minutes. So is there a motion to approve the minutes from the December 15th meeting?
I can motion to approve.
Thanks, Patrick. And a second?
Second.
Thanks. All those in favor say yay.
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 And any opposed? Okay, so we have a public comment now, and if there's any listeners on the line to make a public comment, you can call in at 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 with the meeting ID 937-8080-1941, or you can join by Zoom. So are there anybody wishing to make a public comment?
We do have one caller. Let's see. If you'd like to address the Renters Commission, you can go ahead and raise your hand by pressing *9. Give it just a moment, and then we'll give it a moment too if anyone's calling in or trying to log on. All right, so the phone listener has not raised their hand. so we can close public comment.
Okay. And there's another at the end. So if you're listening on the phone, you'll have another chance to speak. But let's get into it. So the first thing on the agenda is a Tenant Education Committee update. And I'm not sure if this is actually happening because we haven't met since the last meeting and Rich is not here. But Hannah, do you know something different? Is there an update from the Tenant Education Committee?
No, I believe the only update would be that we have a scheduled meeting now in February, so we'll have a more robust update at the next meeting.
Right, and I guess since there's new people, if you're interested in joining the Tenant Education Committee, that would be something to let Kristen know, and then you could come to that meeting, which is on February 2nd. Okay, the next one is the Right to Renew Committee update, and this is actually from me. Am I able to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do that. So just to give a little bit of background, we've been talking about different issues with Right to Renew, especially around enforcement. And some of us got together and drew very heavily on Jordan's Right to Renew policies, actually to draw up some best practices for the Right to Renew ordinance, which is a kind of a new ordinance that protects tenants from predatory early leasing. So we put together some best practices to share with the larger group, best practices for landlords, best practices for the city, best practices for the University of Michigan, and then for renters themselves. I'm going to share my screen and go through it, and then I don't know if we have a quorum in this meeting, so maybe in the next meeting that would be a good thing to vote on, to say like this is kind of the way that we as a body would like people to be approaching this ordinance, because there's been a lot of enforcement issues. So I'm going to share and walk you through it. Can you see that?
Yes.
So the top just gives a little bit of background, and essentially it explains like where the Right to Renew ordinance came from, and the city council passed it fairly recently. And the idea is that it restricts, just for anybody who doesn't know, I'm not sure if everybody does. The idea is to restrict landlords from showing and leasing apartments really early in the season, because that creates a lot of pressure early on in the leasing cycle, and people are scrambling for houses and for apartments, and that often means that people who don't have as much financial security end up being in a situation where they're left without enough housing options because they can't sign early. So yeah, these are just some ideas we had for best practices for different groups of people. So like I said, the landlord section really comes from Wessinger Properties, which is Jordan's company, and you can see them here. This is in this section. It's basically saying that you shouldn't start showing leases until 4 months before the big leasing dates. So December, and for leases that start in May, start showing in December. For leases that start in August, start showing in March. Establish dates when you could conduct showings and renewals and make those dates visible on the website. So a lot of landlords don't have public information. It's really useful to put that on there. When are you going to start showing? Have a policy and commit to it. Have that on your website. Inform tenants when you're signing what your policy is. Don't keep wait lists. This is something we've been talking about a lot. Like, just because you can't legally sign leases, don't keep an informal wait list to give people who sign up early priority. Don't charge fees to be in kind of a first come first serve wait list. Don't keep informal wait lists behind the scenes, having people on deck. Do prioritize current tenants for renewal unless there's a reason not to renew to them. Ask current tenants about renewal 1 month before, and give them that month to decide whether or not they want to renew before you start showing. And this one's obvious. Don't sign leases until the legal date, but it's worth saying anyways. And then don't ask prospective tenants to sign until it's legal to sign. So those are the ones for landlords. And I'll just pause here in case anybody wants to comment on any of those ones. Yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
Just two kind of minor things. I would say on the bullet point, to hold an apartment that isn't available for leasing, I think we even need to include the squishy that may not be available for leasing, because a lot of these times the landlord saying, and I think with right to renew having specifics about when you can ask about renewal, that we're going to have even these situations where they're saying, well, I can't ask about renewal, but I'm going to take a fee, and it may or may not be available. I think that's kind of an important gray area, because the tenant still has no idea, the prospective tenant still has no idea what their actual chance of actually getting that apartment is. So that kind of covers a little bit further. And the only other thing that I might suggest addressing is what was I gonna say? I guess you've covered most of the things. It's tough. It's tough because there is nuance in the lease start date. I mean, there are some landlords in Ann Arbor that have July leases. They're definitely more in the minority, but I think making it clear that the timeline is based on the dates, not this arbitrary May, December connection by date. And I don't know, I'll leave it up to you renters. Do you feel like that's captured well enough? Because if it's July, it's going to be a different timeline than is listed here. So I'll leave that up to the renters to comment on. But I think just that is part of this that gets confusing, is that, there's late July leases, and there's, so how do we cover the non-student population that's working on leases that may be totally not related at all to May or August necessarily?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think that's a good change. I mean, I think that this does capture most leases, but you're right, it's not all of them. Where is the first comment that you made? I didn't catch where that should go.
Okay, that was that was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th bullet point. Do not charge fees, refundable or non-refundable, to hold an apartment that may not be available for leasing.
Yeah.
I mean, basically the bottom line is do not charge fees, period.
Right.
So you could even just put period, or especially to hold an apartment that may not be available for leasing. And then the third point that I might consider in there is, tenants, and I don't know, part of this is how do we want to approach this morally too, right? Like if tenants want to, I also, when we're speaking of tenants' rights and we're empowering tenants, I also want tenants to understand that tenants, per even the right to renew, could come and say, I for sure am staying. This is my 3rd year of dental school. I would like to sign my renewal, at the first date that it's able, or I guess how do you cover that? How do you cover the piece that the tenant could request to sign earlier if they wanted to, or do we not want to? I guess throwing that out to renters, is there any point in bringing that up?
Yeah, does anybody want to respond to that directly before moving on to Zachariah? That's a good question. Yeah, go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, this isn't fully formed, but this is actually something that happened to me recently because of like a risk to like a buyout of where I live, that it was important to me to extend my lease. And I had to look up the rules myself and like be like, oh, I wish I had this more front and center. I'm wondering if there's a way that's like, since this is for landlords and not for the renters, but to make clear like only extend or add on to a lease before the deadlines if approached by the tenant, or something like something about proactive or approach language might be helpful.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good comment. Jordan, and then Gail. Zachariah, did you put your hand down? Because you would be first.
I didn't mean to.
Oh, then you're up.
Okay, thank you. Still trying to figure out how much of a delay there is. I wanted to ask Jordan and Bob here what you two think about wait lists that don't have fees. Do you see, validity there? Do you think it's helpful for landlords to hold those wait lists if they don't have fees? And just curious, if from your perspective, do you think that would maybe hurt any prospective tenants having feeless wait lists?
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think the wait lists, it feels like just another sort of constriction of supply. for people who are trying to get in, or if you're brand new to the city and everything is waitlisted, then what are you going to do? I don't know, that it just doesn't feel like wait lists are a good thing to use. Having said that, it appears that there are a number of companies that are using them. But again, I don't see how that helps tenants, and I don't see how it helps tenants.
Yeah, I generally agree, because that's, you're artificially giving them some hope that they're going to have something that there could be zero chance. They could be 10th on the waiting list. The apartment could not be available. I think it provides a false sense of reassurance. But I will lift up, Gail and I have been working with some landlords and U of M that are looking to do better, that are more corporate perspective. And I will say that for them, for me, I'm leasing a number that's reasonable, but for them, they have mentioned to us that if they don't have wait lists, they're then trying to fill 300 beds in a matter of a couple of weeks, even maybe. And that's really tough. So I just want to lift that up. I don't have a lot of commitment to it or, effort behind it. And Gail may be able to chime in on that too. But I also want to note that there is kind of that perspective that isn't being represented here. And also, I guess, to lift up that we're talking about, these are often students that live in these buildings that are dealing with this actual physical piece of it. And so if the idea is that they can't do wait lists, and then, the handful of students that they have doing leasing are slammed with all these things, we have to be, while they're owned and managed by higher rise folks, sometimes the fallout comes down on those students. So I guess gently bring that up and say that would be something to investigate. In my perspective, is the impact on completely outlawing wait lists on landlords that are trying to do the right thing, that are function very differently than Bob and I.
Yeah, go ahead, Gail.
Well, I think Jordan and I can continue to kind of give you guys information as we continue to have meetings with them, because it is a different animal completely. And so, there are people, as Jordan has mentioned, who are trying to do the right thing, and we're going to try to work with them. But back to the point of I think, whether or not a tenant could sign earlier than before the 150 days. I mean, there is a provision in the right to renew ordinance that says the provisions in the section can't be waived by the parties to a rental agreement. So I wonder, how that's going to impact things as well.
Yep, go ahead, Travis.
So I was going to speak to that too, and I was going back and rereading the exact language, and it might be worth a further conversation with Attorney Reiser at some point. The way that I'm reading it, the early leasing portion, which sets the actual timelines, stipulates dates that the landlord must abide by, in terms of like no later or no sooner than. Can they notify that they have to let them know? I think there might be some wiggle room to allow for a tenant to come earlier, but I'd like to double check on that as I'm kind of reskimming the language right now. And I do know that we don't allow them to kind of waive their rights, but the language does appear to be landlord facing, not tenant facing.
Hannah.
This probably depends on the answer to that question when we officially get it, but I'm wondering, is this a place where we could have another bullet or within a bullet about assuming that people can if the renter wants to resign early or go back and extend their lease or something, is this where we can say the landlord should not be, threatening rent increase? This is something we've been talking about. There's just some ways that it's clearly a threat versus this is a normal rent increase. And I don't know if that can be captured here, but the stuff that says the rent is going to go up each week until you resign.
Right.
I wonder if that can be involved in this best practice somehow.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That was missing from here. Any other comments on the landlord best practices? And my thinking is that I can share this document with everybody after the meeting, and then we can refine and make comments over this month, and then maybe we can vote on it next month if we feel ready for that. So this is just our first discussion. Okay, I'm going to move on to the city of Ann Arbor because I don't see any hands up. Some suggestions for the city, and we might have more to talk about here because we've talked a lot about landlords and renters and less about the city, but I'll just run through them. So sending information to landlords on postcards describing the law and the best practices, sending postcards to renters themselves explaining their rights, sending best practices for landlords. Oh, I think this is just a repetition. Oh no, sending it through the Washtenaw Area Apartment Association, which communicates with a lot of landlords. So that's just getting information out. Then auditing the bigger landlords and kind of assessing their compliance, auditing landlords that have had a lot of complaints and kind of communicating with those landlords about how to be compliant with the law. So that's not, it's a more proactive way of making sure that this law is being enforced, and then sending warning letters if there are landlords who are suspected of violating this. And I know that Richa has some good information on who's not abiding by the ordinance. Processing complaints swiftly, publishing aggregated data about violations so that people know how widespread it is. That could be on the city website. Then revising the complaint form. This is something that we've talked about, but there's the way that the complaint form is written is pretty confusing to renters. So they're dissuaded from filling that out. So that needs to be corrected. And then producing a yearly compliance report for the next 5 years, because it's a new law, to see how it's working out. Any comments on that? Yeah, Jordan.
I agree with you on the form. I mean, I think something that's like a form that can be just filled out and clicked, like the idea that you have to download the form, then fill it out, then send it to Janet, the whole like process, it just seems not great either. And piggybacking on that too, the thing that I get from so many people, and even when I'm like I've talked to Zachariah about like a handful of situations where people don't even want to email the renters commission with an issue that like we really need to be hearing. The idea of anonymity and how that is all working and what is done with the information seems to be kind of missing in all of our processes here. And I'm wondering if that wouldn't help students and renters in general feel more comfortable. Like what happens with the information? When can you expect to hear? Can you remain fully anonymous with information that goes back to the landlord? Just kind of how to make that better. And I don't have any answers, just things that I hear from parents and students.
Right. Yeah, Travis.
I was going to wait until our council update to share this as well, but since it's relevant to this conversation, I did also want to let folks know that Councilmember Harrison and I did have a meeting yesterday. Is that right, Cynthia? Yesterday with the administrator and some other members of staff to chat about enforcement and to share some of the concerns that Renters Commission has been passing along through us. I would classify it as a pretty good conversation. I think that I am expecting, I know for a fact that Attorney Reiser, as well as a couple of other staff members, are working together on a more formal communication and update to the body. And so I would expect that soon as well. And some of it does cover kind of some of the education pieces that the city is doing. And I also shared some of the frustration with enforcement or the perceived lack thereof. And so I know that they are looking into that some more as well and plan to provide an update to this group as well. So hopefully that will help as we're crafting some of these recommendations. Am I missing anything, Councilmember Harrison, from our conversation?
No, you're not missing anything.
Thanks.
That's great. Thanks for that update. Any other comments on the recommendations to the city? The ones for the university need a bit of work. Maybe Gail can help here because I didn't know exactly the timing of campus leases. But the last meeting, somebody had called in and said one concern that they had was that the right to renew ordinance would be out of sync with University of Michigan housing leases. So I was just thinking here we could say let's try to get those on the same timeline if they're not already. Then communicating renewal laws and best practices to incoming students. That could be through Beyond the Diag and other channels. I think students get a lot of their information from the university, so they can help a lot there. Not advertising or providing a platform for landlords who are advertising off-campus housing really early on. Keeping a list of landlords that are keeping wait lists or have in other ways violated tenants' rights so that students know to avoid those landlords. And then I just put this on here. I don't know if other people know about this. I just learned about it from Gail, but eliminating the pay structure for advertising off-campus housing. And yeah, maybe somebody who knows more about any of these things would like to speak to them.
I don't really know. I can find out, but don't really know the process for on-campus housing. You know, as far as the rest of it, I mean, that's something to discuss with Beyond the Diag, but you know, keeping some of the information, the communicating renewal laws, that's I think we're going to try to do maybe with the work that Jordan and I are doing. But I can't really speak to, you know, how they'll respond about the rest of the suggestions.
Yeah, Jordan.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is tricky, and this is something that we've had conversations with Beyond the Diag, like ourselves personally, Nick and I, for years. You know, it used to be a really open thing, and then it switched over. And for those who don't know, I know I've talked to Zachariah about it too. And this is, we pay Beyond the Diag to be a part of it. And when that started, and I would say that it's since I've known my husband, so maybe 10 years ago, is when that change happened. And so it's an apartments.com based platform. So as everyone can imagine, apartments.com caters to apartments and high rises and the more commercial structure. And so the thing that we're going to hear when you say don't advertise a platform for landlords to advertise is you're going to hear every high rise say we're always leasing, it's year round. And so our model unit is going to be up because you never know, like even when you sign a lease with some of these high rises, it rarely happens, but Gail and I do hear about it where they come back to you, you know, in March and say, oh, you signed a lease for a 1-bedroom and all that we have is the penthouse 1-bedroom and it's twice as much rent and that's all we have for you. And so if you want to live with us, you know, you have to take this thing. And so there's this problem with they're always open for leasing and they have model units. And so they're not advertising unit number 1428, whereas Nick and I are advertising unit 1428 because that's the only 1428 that we have. And I'd say that's probably true for Bob and most of us other small landlords and some larger ones. But so that's kind of the problem is they're going to say, we're always leasing, we're always open, we have vacancies at rolling times a year. And so we deserve to advertise for this thing that we're paying a lot of money for at any time that we want. And so I think the pay structure, as you noted, is like really a huge part of the problem. But this is a resource for, you know, I got 2 emails this week from incoming either postdocs or PhD students that are actually just moving to Ann Arbor in February. And so we do have to keep in mind, you know, that there are people that are outside of those cycles and that we want things to be available and them to maybe know about Woodland Muse that might have something on a rolling basis. And so I think that's the feedback that you're going to hear about that. And the question about the pay structure, you know, Nick and I had complained for a while about it to the past director. Mark Simmons is head of it now. He worked for Avalon in general. Find him to be really lovely human, and he really does want to make things better. And also there's this huge financial piece to this now that is unfortunate. So I think we have to look at that. But I do hear that anybody can advertise on it now. So I think it is a little bit different, say in the last 5 years or maybe just before COVID, that they have opened it up. So it's not locked into only those things. But the one thing that is a lockout are the housing fairs. So like Nick and I said, make us the most basic package to have access to the website. We pay, I think it's like $800 or $900 year for the service, but we are on a very bottom package. So we're locked out of the in-person housing fairs. So when you go to an in-person housing fair, you may not see Nick and I or Bob or someone else because of that. And so then the students go to that and they come back and say, oh my gosh, all of these options are well over $1,200 a month or something like that. And so there ends up being this, that's all they think there is for housing. The one fair that we did go to just before COVID, the most common statement that Nick and I got was, holy cow, I had no idea that there were other options for people who are just new to Ann Arbor. So I do think that not only the pay, but the piece that is what is beyond the diag representing as the available options for on-campus housing and what they're promoting is a whole kind of side piece that's related, not related.
Okay, looks like there's a lot more thinking that needs to be done in that section then. That's useful. Okay, and for renters, this is the last one. Renters should familiarize themselves with the law. Don't sign on to a wait list, although it seems like there's some complications there too. Don't pay to be added to a wait list. Don't sign leases with landlords who are known to violate renewal laws. And, that would be contingent on that information being available. And if you suspect that your landlord has violated your rights, to file a complaint. Is there anything missing there from the renters section, or any comments that people want to make on those? Okay, so that's what we have so far. And like I said, I will send that out to the larger group and we can keep working on it over the next few weeks and come back to it in the next meeting. And that's all I have for that update. Next thing is the University of Michigan Community Partner and Grant update. Zachariah, are you speaking about this?
Yeah, I guess if someone else who's at that meeting might want to speak about it, I can open it up to them. I know Patrick was there. I guess I can just briefly say that we met with a faculty member, technically two faculty members from School of Public Health to talk about a study that they're undertaking. And they're submitting a grant proposal, and we've signed on as a community partner. But I know since Patrick is an alum from the School of Public Health and he was there, I can pass it off to him if you have any other details that you remember from those meetings.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. It's an exciting opportunity, and I think I don't have my notes with me, but I think this opportunity was related to, I think, some funding from the Ginsberg Center, if I remember correctly, and it would be sort of like a sub-study of another study that is being undertaken, and I think would involve some key informant interviews with the student renter population, and we can definitely provide kind of more of a official summary of what was proposed. But I know Kristen did reach out and said that we have the full permission to participate in the project, and I believe that the proposal was submitted. Zachariah, have you seen any confirmation of that on your end?
I don't think so, no, but I have no reason to suspect that it wasn't. Yeah.
Any other comments on that? Okay. Oh, Zachariah, are you speaking?
I think I would just add really quickly. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I just wanted to add, just to clarify for people who weren't there at the meetings where we did discuss this. This is a study from the School of Public Health to learn more about how the stresses of the Ann Arbor housing market affect U of M students specifically. So it's just to look at student renters. So just want to make sure everyone.
And we can resend the proposal materials out after the meeting, so everyone has them.
That's a good idea. Zachary, you broke up a little bit at the end there, but I think we caught everything that you were saying. Yeah, it's an exciting study. I think we can be of some use to it too. Next thing is that we've invited rental housing to attend one of our meetings to ask them some questions, what they know about renters and renting in the city. And Kristen made a form to facilitate gathering the information and questions that we want to ask them. So Kristen, if you want to take us through the form you made, that would be great.
Sure. All right, so a link to this is in the email I sent out earlier today, and then also in the email from Friday with the meeting agenda. I wanted to create a form where you all could see what other people are requesting to be able to kind of collaborate remotely. There's just a drop down here with some topics, and then spaces to write your more information or kind of whatever you'd need to clarify. I'd like to provide this information to rental housing services so that they have a pretty good amount of time to prepare. So about a month to collect. Are there any questions? I don't know what rental housing is planning for the format of their, like if they're going to do a presentation or be kind of an informal Q&A. But I think that providing them with questions gives you the best chance that they'll be prepared to answer them. So.
Right. Thanks for putting that form together, Kristen. Anybody have any questions or comments they want to make about that in advance of rental housing coming here now? We have one more meeting in between then and now, so you have a lot of time. But just want to give one more chance if anybody has anything to say. Okay. Moving on to the plan for the February 16th meeting. What does this entail? Just deciding what will be on the agenda?
Yes. So it sounds like you might want to have your the best practices document back up for discussion and maybe approval or I had some questions about that. Like an approval to say like these are the Renters Commission official best practices. You could also decide to provide it to City Council as a communication, something like that. Does that sound like what you'd like for next month?
Yeah, I think the Right to Renew committee, I think that should definitely be on there for next time because there's a lot more to talk about. And I mean, hopefully people will leave comments in the next month. Yeah, Travis.
I have a suggestion, although I need to follow up with one of my colleagues who would be responsible for the presentation. But I know that I need to, and here's the video thing I was talking about, need to follow up with Council Member Cornell, but I know that we previously discussed that she had been exploring some ideas around carbon monoxide detectors in apartments. And so I can check in with her on where things are. And depending on that, she may have interest in joining us or asking me to give some sort of update to the commission, because I know she would like your feedback if we're going to move forward. I just don't know where she is in discussions yet. So I will check with her and can follow up with you, Kristen.
I think also for February 16th, that would be a good time for the Tenant Education Committee to talk because we're going to meet on the 2nd. And is there anything on the waitlist report, Gail? Would you want to talk about that at the next meeting?
Sure. Yep, cool. We can talk about that next meeting. It takes me too long to figure out how to unmute myself.
I'm not sure if I missed other committees. I can't remember all of our committees. But if you're on a committee and you want to be at the next meeting, this would be a good time for you to talk. Okay, that sounds good. I know there was something about sending in like a picture of who we are for something. Is that something that we would
Oh.
need to put on a meeting agenda?
Yes, so I could talk about that a little bit more, or I can talk about it now. I also emailed about Community Academy. Community Academy is a program that the clerk's office puts on that highlights kind of city services and functions. And there is there'll be a presentation on the Renters Commission during one of the sessions. So I would really appreciate a photo, like a headshot or like a photo of each of you, and then a couple of sentences you'd like to describe yourself. That would be great if you could provide those in the next couple of weeks. I have one commissioner sent theirs in already, so I can pull up about Community Academy. Also, I definitely encourage all of you to look at the different sessions that are available, since this is such a new commission, or if you're new to the city, it's super interesting. It is a little bit limited for in-person sessions, and I've been hearing that a lot more people are signed up earlier than usual, so definitely take a look.
Cool, that sounds great. Anything else that people want to discuss at the next meeting or have on the agenda for the next meeting? Okay, let's move on to reports. Report from City Council. So if Travis or Cynthia, if you have updates for us.
Cynthia, do you want to go first? Do you have anything? I've kind of given the main update that I wanted to give, which was that we did have that conversation with staff. John is here now. I don't know if he has anything else he wanted to add to it. I don't know if you were here for my first update, but basically just filled in that we had the conversation and that I'm expecting more formal communication from the administration, filling folks in on enforcement and education efforts and those types of things. And so once we receive that, I think if we have more questions or follow-ups or anything like that, then we can chat about that. But I don't believe, oh, the one other thing I guess I could bring up, because Jordan mentioned to me that I think a few folks were talking about the legislative policy agenda that council passed. We did adopt our kind of legislative priorities for the upcoming year, and wanted to highlight that there are a few very specific renters pieces in that. We have a much more comprehensive list that we've passed in previous years that we've provided to our lobbyists, but it was a really, really long document with a lot of things, and we really wanted to focus in. But a few of those included a repeal of the state ban on rent control, allowing or incentivizing municipalities to do duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes by right, and a statewide ban to reflect Ann Arbor's ban on source of income discrimination, so that there's more consistency across the county, as opposed to just in Ann Arbor and Ypsi. And so those are a few of the things that were pretty clearly renter related, but there are other things that certainly impact renters in there because it has to do with housing and things like that. But just wanted to share that as well, that we are hoping to have some partners at the state level that might be able to move some of our more ambitious policy agenda forward now.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Cynthia, anything on your end?
No, not this evening. Thank you.
And I don't think the HHSAB liaison is here. So let's move on. Staff. Kristen, you have anything for us?
My main items were Community Academy and submitting the photo to yourself, so I'm pretty much covered. Definitely submit your response to the rental housing question thing, and yeah, that covers it.
And do any of the commissioners have updates or reports that they would like to give? If you have something, just raise your hand. Yeah, Jordan.
Just a question, are we going over the handbook separately, or is now, Kristen, I don't know if I know you sent that out and said read it, but I just had a couple of
Oh,
minor
yeah.
questions.
This would be a great time.
Okay. So a couple of things, just I know I have seen people be like out of state. It didn't address anything about people like not being in Ann Arbor and saying your location. So I had a question about that. Didn't seem to be noted anywhere in there.
You can attend virtual meetings from outside of Ann Arbor. Just important to during the roll call, we would just have you reference where you are. We've had commissioners like at the airport or
sure,
all over the place. So
cool. Just wanted to say that might be a nice thing if we're handing this to new people. And then the removal for cause by the mayor, like we have a pretty supportive mayor right now, but just kind of thinking about if something changed, does the commission have any input or say if the mayor at some point decides that they want to remove someone for cause? I was just kind of wondering about how that would work. So maybe something to think about there. 6.4, more than one office. That wasn't clear to me, where we were talking about like, you can't have one office within the Renters Commission. You can't be on multiple commissions. I wasn't sure what that part meant. And then if committee meetings followed the same like open meetings stuff and having to be announced. So those were my 4 main things that seemed unclear to me as a newbie.
okay. So for the mayor removing members, it's a little bit case by case. I think that if there was a case where a member missed some meetings for a situation that staff was aware of and the commission was aware of, we would communicate that to the mayor. I think that typically members are removed by the mayor if they are constant no call, no shows, or some different reasons like that. So I don't think it's a big issue that I've seen with members being removed when the commission thinks that they shouldn't be removed, but that's a good question. And then holding more than one office at the same time. The Renters Commission only has the chair and vice chair, but other groups have like a secretary or some other positions. I think that we probably don't need that item in our bylaws if there's only 2 offices. But today we had Lucy, vice chair, run the meeting. I was thinking to myself, what if Lucy wasn't available today and we don't have a secretary? So something to think about. And then what was your last question?
The last bullet point was, I know that the commission meetings and the committee meetings were like in separate. So yeah, just about committee meetings and kind of the duty to notify or how those work, or if they're public, or that I left that section feeling a little unclear still.
Yeah, so for the formal committees, we have a couple of the formal committees, and then we have some of the work groups. If there are more than a quorum on the committee, we definitely need to do all of the Open Meetings Act stuff. Sometimes there may be less than quorum on the committee, but kind of depending on what's going on, it's always good to have it noticed and available for people to attend and speak during public comment. Riser, do you have a comment about that?
Nope, some quorum committee meetings are fine.
Okay.
Hello.
I just saw your kind of pop up at the bottom. For folks who were here at the beginning when Riser wasn't here, this is John Riser. He is in the attorney's office at the city.
Hello, everyone, and hello again to most of you, and hello to some of you that are new. I was at the investiture for new judge Arian Slay at Pioneer High School. So sure I was.
Great to have you here. Sorry, I didn't say hello when you came in.
That's all right.
Jordan, did you have anything else?
No, I think that covers it. Just things that we could make it a little more solidly hand off to a new person.
Right. Yeah, and on that, I should go through the committees we have so that you all know what they are. We have a tenant education committee, a right to renew committee, and is the chapter 105 enforcement committee, and then there's a work group, right, for application review. And maybe that's all. What am I missing?
I think this research study is some kind of work group or subcommittee. Is that right, Kristen? I think I saw my name on
Yes.
that.
Yeah, just kind of one of the informal, the community partner for the grant, the group that does the research on wait lists and fees. And then also, because we've had so much like vacancy and turnover a little bit, there's been a group looking at applications for members also and kind of reporting back on those and making recommendations. So those are groups that we haven't been doing public notice for because sometimes there are only 2 people.
Any other reports from commissioners or things that people want to say? Yep, Zachariah.
I wanted to let everyone know that I've been in touch with Councilmember Cornell regarding carbon monoxide detectors. I know that she's working on evaluating our current rules for carbon monoxide detectors. It looks like new structures are required to have them, but existing structures aren't. So there's some holes there. And there was somewhat recently a very tragic accident that happened in a motel where someone was killed by carbon monoxide poisoning. So I think that was a reminder, kind of spurred this effort. So I'll let you all know if anything, as I learn more information from the council member, and let me know if you're interested in potentially working on that. I'm guessing she's going to have a resolution sometime in probably the next few months.
Yeah, Jordan.
That might be a good thing to have on deck for the housing people when they come in March too. I mean, just thinking about like we bought them for all of our buildings. After that, we had them some places, but we just made sure that we had them everywhere that made sense. But there are some logistical things that even Nick and I can't possibly think to consider because they're so outside of our stuff, just about like where they should be placed in things. So I think making sure that we are involving the inspectors and fire department like people who know about the logistics of where carbon monoxide, where is not a risk and where is a risk in those discussions, I think is important.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I would second that. I know that they're required by code if you have any electric work done or permitted electric work done on the unit, and there is some code specifications on where they have to go, and I think it would be really, really valuable to learn that, as well as, honestly, especially for old houses. Personally, I would support a resolution from council.
Definitely. Thanks for bringing that up, Zachariah. Any other reports or comments, updates from commissioners? It's a quiet meeting tonight, isn't it? Okay, so let's move on to our second public comment then. And Kristen, do you do this part? I just realized that I kind of awkwardly read the first part, but normally you do this, I think.
Oh, either is fine. It's just important to say it so people can hear it and call in if they need to. So
right.
All right, so this is the second public comment. Public comment can be made by phone at 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 with meeting ID 935-8080-1941. Or you can join the Zoom meeting by going to a2gov.org/renters commission meeting. Right now, we don't have anyone in the waiting room except CTN, so we'll give it just a moment. Right, there are no callers or attendees.
Okay, the last thing is communications to the Renters Commission. They're included in an attachment on the agenda. And yeah, I don't know if anybody wants to respond to the communications we got or, say anything about this. Yep, Kristen.
I'll share that. So those come into the Renters Commission inbox that I see, and then I kind of, depending on what the issue is, either put them in contact with Janet or ask some more questions and put them in contact with Janet. And then they're always asked if they would like their communication provided at a Renters Commission meeting. So I've just been including those that come in that are kind of tough cases that residents are experiencing. And Janet has been super responsive, like responding within the hour. So kind of just passing those along.
Mm. Yeah, Gail.
For the ones that are, for the folks that reach out that are students, you can also refer them to our office for assistance.
Will do.
Thanks.
We have an automatic reply that goes out when people email the Renters Commission. I'll include your office's contact info in that also.
Anything else? I mean, does anybody want to say anything about these communications? Okay, that brings us to the end of the agenda. Does anybody want to speak before we move to adjourn? Yeah, Gail.
Sorry, I do think we need to respond to folks. So, I mean, I didn't look at them ahead of time. I can look at them and maybe make some recommendations for how we should respond, but I don't think we can just leave them without more response. And so, Kristen, you said you have a usual response that you send?
Yes, I'll pull up. It kind of says if it is a code violation, we'll put you in contact with Janet. If it is actually about something else at the city, we would put you in contact with that department. If it's like a general clerk's thing, we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you no matter what, but these are the kind of different situations that could happen. I don't include rental housing's information in the automatic reply now, but I think that definitely could. I could pull it up here.
Okay, I will send you the best link for our office, and I'll take a look at these and then just make a recommendation for what we should do, if anything more than that, for these.
Yeah, Hannah.
Yeah, I think I just have a question about that because I think I got something wrong. So I guess I heard what Kristen was saying as like somewhat like Janet has been responding to these, but Gail, are you saying like we want to make sure that we confirm like the Renters Commission has seen this separate from that?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think it would be, they're reaching out to the Renters Commission, so I think we should let them know that, we've seen it. Maybe we think where they've been directed is sufficient, or maybe we have some other suggestions or not. But I think if they're going to reach out to us, we should respond directly too.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Is there a process that we can set up for doing that? Like, how would we go about responding to these people?
It's definitely something we could look at. They're not super frequent. And kind of depending on the issue, it's always like a different response, right? So sometimes it could be an easy code violation and sometimes it's not. I really like the idea of providing Gail's resources because rental housing can only enforce like a provable rental housing code violation, and maybe there's some other issues that a person would need assistance with. So definitely, I think a conversation could be had about how we should be fielding these.
Jordan.
I think another resource, I mean, my standard reply, whether it's in a Facebook group or if somebody contacts me via email or text or whatever, is also includes Legal Services of South Central Michigan. You know, Gail is awesome. Who is the Gail for non-students, I think is something that and if we don't feel that Legal Services of South Central Michigan, I mean, maybe John, maybe you have an idea. I have no idea if they do much, if they respond, like, is there any other help? And maybe Gail, you know, too, like, a resource for people who are not student tenants feels particularly important. So I don't know if there's crowdsourcing that come up with others, but that's the general resource I give, though I admit I haven't heard many success stories with it.
I think Nick Rommel and I put together a list of resources, but maybe I never shared it with anybody, so it's not doing anybody a lot of good. I'll send that to Kristen as well. Because there's also the U of M legal clinic.
We do a lot of like paralegal tenant counseling and GEO as well, just because people have so many issues. So, you know, if they email, I mean, we can't do anything legally, of course, but it helps just to talk with someone about their issue, talk it through. So that's another place that we can refer people to. Yeah.
It's a little bit off of that topic. I had one more update about the tenant, the rights and duties of tenants booklet, kind of the state of it post right to renew. We went through all of the booklets in the clerk's office, and we have about 4,000 copies that were updated in March 2022. So they include ELO, but they don't have right to renew, but they now all have right to renew like in them as a leaflet. And we have plenty of those available in the clerk's office. And if anyone has a book that says a date other than March 2022, it's not up to date. It doesn't have up-to-date voter registration information or housing code information.
That's great. It's good that we have new books. Anything else from anyone? In terms of the communications we got, I have some ideas about how to respond, so I'll just email you about that, Kristen, if that's okay. Okay, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn? We made it through our agenda.
Good motion to adjourn.
And a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Yay.
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 Yay. Any opposed? Okay, and with that, meeting is adjourned. It's great to see you all.